Hey guys, today we wanted to take you behind the scenes and show you something really cool we've created for a client. It's essentially a 12-month permaculture implementation plan for the property. The idea here is to prevent overwhelm by answering questions like, okay, where do you start? Which projects should you do this year? If you don't have time to do all of those projects, which ones should you prioritize? What else? What's the best time of the year to do those projects? And essentially what we want to do today is showcase the plan itself that we've created for our client Shree, and also talk with William to understand the logic that went into it. So I'm going to turn the question over to William. Let's actually start with, so with Shree, you did two things. One, you guys worked together to create a permaculture design.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can show this, the whole thing. And then the second thing you did was once you created the design, you worked on that like 12-month essentially workflow for what to do on the farm. Just to give people some context about the property itself, could we really quickly talk about the design first? And actually maybe even zoom out a bit more and start with why do we need a permaculture design? Like what problem does having a design solve for us?
Okay, so the first thing is in developing any permaculture properties, getting clear on that vision of how that property looks like in terms of layout. So it all flows from the vision of the owner of what they want to achieve with the property, and then you translate that vision into drawing like this. And this ensures like their vision for the property, that there is an initial exercise that each of our client goes through, and that's understanding their vision and context, starting from why they're doing this and what's important, and then clearly defining design goals. And once you have those design goals based on the site itself and the physical characteristics of the sites, you create a design. So this ensures that you're putting the right pieces of the right things that you want to have in the right spot based on the microlocation of the site. So, and that gives you that clear vision. Yeah.
Right.
How the property will look like.
Yeah. Tells you as you're designing what kind of permaculture systems to have, like an orchard, a market garden, a greenhouse. So the right things. Where do you put it on the property?
Yes.
Like so you work with nature, and then you essentially don't waste resources down the line.
Yeah. There is I would say two components to it. The first component is what they call in permaculture the mainframe, and the mainframe is your access, your water systems, and then your infrastructure. So the infrastructure meaning the house and the workshop and the fences access, and stuff like roads, that. Yeah. So that's the first, and then that clearly outlines the remaining parts of the property where you should put like how the land should be used.
Right, the living systems, like
yes, the activities, the systems, the living systems, the growing areas. Yeah.
By the way, guys, we've meant to record this for a couple of weeks now, but like because our calendar is crazy right now, this was the only time we could find. Monday morning, 5 a.m. Williams time, 7 a.m. mine.
Yeah.
We'll see how this goes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why we have it. Walk me through Shree's design a bit. So just give me the whistle-stop tour, the big picture.
So she wanted, well, an important, like, interesting thing is that she basically discarded like permaculture maybe 2 months before me doing this.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, but she knows what she wants. Basically, it's I would describe it as a retirement property. And the main function of the property should be, the self-reliance plus a place for her grandchildren to enjoy. That was clear from the vision. I won't reveal like her. That would be like really personal, like the vision that she outlined. But this is basically what she wanted in terms of systems to have, and I just translated her vision of self-reliance into concrete things on the land.
So everything you put on the design needs to fulfill that function of this is going to be a retirement property.
Yeah.
For me and my grandchildren to enjoy.
Yeah.
What climate is she in, by the way?
She's in subtropics. Yeah.
Right.
So that all kind of, yeah, and we'll come to that part, but she's very water rich, and in terms of terrain and in terms of water throughout the year. So that's kind of one of important pieces of any type of design is, what's the water situation like?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I can explain like what I did here.
Would
like
it be easier
yeah.
if I stop sharing my screen, you share yours, so you can actually point stuff on here?
Just give me a second because I need to open her file. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Give me a second. Stop sharing. Oh, but then. Oh, never mind. I got confused. If you share your screen, it will still be recorded.
No,
so
you need to
they'll be able
allow
check
me
it.
first. You need to allow me first.
Sure. Let's make you co-host.
Okay. Desktop 2. Okay. All right. So first, like we already touched on, the design goals and context. So the first thing I would go through is like a thorough site assessment. Their location and size and
Could
the
you just really
yeah.
quickly scroll down the whole thing so like they see what kind of things you look at, restrictions,
and
climate.
Of course, the climate and the wind location. This gives the sectors and a lot of different information about the biome and overall topography. And then
this is
zooming.
something you do for the client.
Yes, the site assessment. Yeah, the site assessment is really. I do that for them, like with their input. Like they give me certain type of information that I can't, get remotely, and they give me like a property walkthrough, but I do everything else. Remotely, and getting some pieces of information from them as I need them. So
if it feels so weird to pretend I don't know what this is about and then having to ask you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. And then basically on their context and the site information, the site assessment data, I create something like this, starting from the access first. And like in the course, I teach people to go through certain sequence, but when you're designing, you're basically considering everything at once. Yeah, but there is like a certain sequence. I would look at the existing access points and where they're located, and then add new ones if necessary. I would look at the water, so how to achieve that water, basically self-sufficiency in a sense. Shree has a water well planned and a water tank and a pond. So basically
that's a big pond.
Yeah, that's a big pond, and it's already there. So
oh, is it?
Yeah, it's already there, but it's broken. But the terrain itself is it's like this is like a small ditch that's feeding the pond, and then the neighbor has a pond, and the overflow from the pond goes into another ditch and into this pond, and the overflow from that pond goes into the neighbor's ditch. So it's really like the only thing she needs to is to fix that pond, because now it's broken. The levee has broken. So this is all the water she needs, and the house is on the top of the hill, and she wants a water well. maybe she'll have it, maybe she won't, depending on the costs. But it makes sense to be on the ridge where it can feed the water tank that then feeds by gravity the rest of the property.
How big is the property roughly? What's the
I think
scale we're looking at?
Just give me a second. It's 5 acres.
5
so
acres.
I think it's 10 acres. Like 5 acres is the part of that we are kind of designing, and then the rest is
Right.
the wild forest area.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of the water, and
wow, that is a really big pond then.
yeah, it's a really good situation. She wasn't keen in first like to have it because she doesn't like the snakes, the
mosquitoes.
The water would attract, but in her situation it's like she either has a water well or a pond. Like it would be such a missed opportunity not to have it in this kind of situation. Right. Because the water will flow, and
and the ditches are there, like everything is there. It's
just, she can capture it. Yeah. So once we had like the water and basically the access, then it was mostly about
the access is the yellow bits, right? Those are the roads.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. The access are is the yellow. The red would be the infrastructure points. And then basically all the rest, the outline, like the green are the growing areas. And then this I don't know, bluish type of color is also growing areas, but we are leaving that alone. So
a couple of things that jump out at me whenever I look at a design like this. One is, as you can see, it doesn't have to be detailed. It doesn't have to be like aesthetically beautiful.
Yeah.
Really, the only thing you need to capture with the design is good permaculture thinking in terms of, are you putting, like, do you know what's going to go into each area? Yeah. And then are you putting that in the right place? As long as you do that, you can do it on a napkin. It doesn't have to be really complicated. Like the value of the design is the thinking that goes into it.
Yeah. And there is a lot of prep in order to get to this phase where I'm kind of saying, oh, this is the access point, this is the water, but there is the prep in terms of understanding, what your goals are and getting clear on that. And then there is the understanding the site, and then is, outlining those type of things on the property. And you start from things that are already there, and then that with the information, like the sectors that are influencing us outside, and the topography and everything kind of gives you those limitations and criteria on how to design this. And basically once you have then these areas outlined, those are like the main things that you need to get right, like the locations. Like a lot of people are just fretting over if I start planting my orchard in one place, and then further down the line I realize it's in the wrong spot. So this ensures that you are putting all those systems, like the orchard can be growing there for 100 years in the right spot. And
now that you mentioned that, why is that the right spot for the orchard for this property?
Okay, there are several things. Like one of the things is that it's closer to the house, like based on the zoning. The other thing would be that she wanted, like this is open to the south, so there is a lot of sun. This is basically sloping towards the south as well. So it's on the southern side, which is open to the sun. It is closer to the house. It is giving you a buffer from this neighbor. So there are several things that are this was basically the available location, given that like the chickens are here and the gardens are here. And based on her vision, like her vision was that she's walking to her orchard, watching the orchard, and walking on a path through the
Mhm.
orchard, harvesting things. So this is, and this
Nice.
was the existing path on the property. So this kind of captures that vision of she's looking at the orchard, her grandchildren are in here, they're walking on the
Oh, that's
path,
nice.
harvesting food. So like it's the vision, it's the site, it's the the design considerations of
Mhm.
uh, outside forces and the terrain,
What,
and yeah,
what about the chickens? Why put them here?
she already has the chicken area there.
Oh, I see.
So it's more like extending, like she already has a coop, and what I did is just plan that will be the chicken run area where the chickens will be, and then it's all connected to the to the garden, and all the fertility actually drains in this area that can be harvested and then used in the garden. So like
I see.
basically it was there, but there were certain additions that make it even more better that it's in that location.
Such as.
Well, the thing that it's on a slope. Sorry, it's on the slope, so everything like the runoff from the chickens will drain, to this area, and then she can like this is like a staple, but I was staple garden that I suggested that gets even more like extended, so she can harvest that fertility here. Sorry.
And one other thing that occurred to me, so I mean, this should be pretty obvious to anyone who's familiar with permaculture design, but for people who aren't, one of the ideas of permaculture design when William mentioned zoning was if it's an activity you're going to do frequently, you want to have it close to the house, because what you don't
Yeah.
want to do is like, let's say it's a labor intensive thing, like you want to work in the garden. You don't want to have to walk all the way to China and back every time you need to go into the garden to maybe grab an herb for cooking or to do work in the garden. So whatever is going to be labor intensive, you put it closer to the living area, and whatever is like more hands off, like the wild forest area, for example, being the extreme, you put it
Yeah.
in the outer zones.
Yeah. Like,
and obviously, this is like a rule of thumb. There are exceptions to that depending on what else you want to do.
Of course. Yeah. Like the wild forest there could be, at the back of the house, neighboring the house. But the most important thing is that the things that are frequently used are close.
Yeah.
That's the one of the design principles.
And another manifestation of the same principle is like the infrastructure areas are in a centered location,
Yeah.
close together, so you don't like grab something from the workshop and then walk all the way across the property to go to your greenhouse. Remember, you forgot a hammer. Walk all the way back to the workshop. So it's nice to have it all like facing this kind of backyard area as well. Obviously, that also depends on like sometimes with an existing property, those buildings are elsewhere on the property and it costs a lot of money to move them. So it also depends on what's feasible to what's feasible to keep and what's feasible to move elsewhere. That's the general principle. Okay. Anything else we want to discuss on the design, or should we go into the implementation?
Maybe two things. Like I know she was getting like strong winds from the south side. I put like a windbreak here, so it protects the garden. She wanted bees, so I put bees here with like neighboring the wild forested area where the rest. So and there was this opening here, and she already started planting something. So we transformed that into like nut trees. Sorry. Basically, that's it. And we are keeping this wild as a buffer because the main road is here. So this is the buffer. And
so
the
there's some noise,
the
pollution,
yeah. Yes.
privacy.
Mostly noise and privacy. Yeah. And she doesn't have to utilize everything for her own needs. this is enough, and
That's
we'll
also another
produce it.
good point, especially for retirement property. Like you have to be realistic about what 1 or 2 people can manage, especially as they're going into their old age. And 1 or 2 acres is plenty to manage. So if you have a bigger property, don't feel like you have to like put permaculture systems on every available spot, because A, you won't be able to manage it. B, it will turn from a retirement dream property to a nightmare very quickly. So it's also about, what do we actually need and how do we put it in a place where it's easily manageable. Okay, so
you can always you can always expand.
Correct.
Worst case scenario, you can always expand into other areas instead of having a lot to manage and then
getting overwhelmed, and then everything goes falls through the cracks and things die.
Okay, so once we are done with that, it's all about creating like a implementation
Could you
plan.
open the design a bit? I wanted to point one other thing on there. So when you have a design like this, like again, this comes back to why you need an implementation plan. But hopefully by the time you've clarified the design, everything is crystal clear in your head and you're not feeling overwhelmed in terms of what do I do? But then there's like, as soon as you want to implement this, then you get into the issue of like, do I do all of these at the same time? Which one do I start? So the implementation plan is, okay, given that this is the end goal we want to reach, what do we do this year that's going to be the most effective use of our time and resources to get from wherever you are to the end goal of the design?
Okay, so like this is like the vision. Okay, this is the vision, how it looks like. Basically, in reality, one day, eventually, in 10, 20 years or whatever. So okay. So one important thing to say before we get there, like what we've done here is like it's a concept plan. Concept plan means it's not like detailed. This is done in Google Earth. We don't have to go into all the extreme details, how the food forest is going to look like, how the garden is going to look like. We basically do that as we are in, let's say, our approach. We do that as we are implementing and developing the property. So essentially, we don't have to get bogged into details of, for example, how the windbreak is going to look like. Now, if we are getting to that problem, let's say 5 years from now. So once you get into that phase, we can definitely then lay out, the exact layout
Design
of the windbreak. But for now,
that's actually really smart as well, because for a couple of reasons. One, no plan actually survives contact with the site. So once you start, just a really simple example, you start digging and then you realize that there's a rock there where you wanted to plant something, so you might need to move things around. Or even with the windbreak, climate changes over time. So maybe the winds will get stronger, maybe the winds will get weaker, and then she won't even need the windbreak. So it makes sense not to waste all this effort designing the exact trees she needs for the windbreak. But we already know the most important thing of, if we need a windbreak, this is where it's going to go, and this is the general things we need to look out for, like the winds coming from whichever direction they're coming from, and like how high the wind is. And then the individual designs we'll do when we get to those stages, and you're actually going to see it in the implementation plan as well. Like when she's working on the garden, one of the steps there is to design the layout of the garden. And sorry, I interrupted you. You were saying something.
No, I would say that it would be counterproductive to go into so many details right now. Like this is the big picture, and you work from that. And
it gets the next started,
step,
implementing faster. This is something you can do in a week, 2 weeks. Or
this is
like
simple.
Someone like you. This is simple. Like someone like you, when you have all the data you need, you could do this in like 2 days. And then they can immediately start actually putting things on the farm.
Like you spend more time in context and design goals and site assessment then okay, so this is like an iterative process. So once I do this, there is always that feedback from client, and we discuss it, and maybe we change a few things, edit. But like this is not done in a professional software. This is done in Google Earth, basically, and this is like the positioning is important, and the main elements, like the mainframe is the important thing, and then when you get to how to establish a garden, then you think about, okay, so what's the layout for my garden? Are there also going to be east west or south or north south, or what am I going to how the garden is going to look like? All those type of details and we are working on that right now. So
Right.
but the next stage would be like before we start to like that 12-month plan would be thinking about, okay, so what are the stages of development that I want to go through, like and the stages of the development are I recommend people to like map like 2, 3, 4, whatever makes sense, not in terms of year but in stages. And the stage 1 should always be something like, and you develop the property basically, okay, there are 2 ways, but the first way is like if you had like unlimited budget, you would start according to a keyline scale of permanence, basically, with access and the water and the earthworks, and developing the whole property and establishing that mainframe kind of first, and then working everything else after that. But we don't have an unlimited budget in terms of time or money or energy. So the most effective way is what's called like a nucleus development. You start from the house and you start expanding from the house, with consideration of what is the most important thing you want to achieve. For example, if what is the most important function of the property, if it's self-reliance, then obviously some certain things make sense to start with, like a garden, like an orchard, like a greenhouse, and supplying water for that. So that would be like, let's say, stage 1. In stage 2, she can expand in windbreaks, bees, and nut trees or whatever. But like the first thing is thinking about those stages of development, and once you think about that, then it's kind of, okay, so what I'm doing this year. And
It's kind of like Russian dolls in terms of designing the implementation plan. Like one Russian doll is, okay, what are the big stages of development? Then after that, in stage 1, let's say you're in stage 1, what do I do this year in stage 1? Or if you're in stage 2, what do I do in this year in stage 2, whatever stage you're in?
Because it's hard to, like, they do recommend in permaculture literature that you map across the years, but that doesn't make sense because you're going to push through year 1 and you'll be still in year 3, but working on year 1 type of goals. So it makes sense to have.
And
like,
the other thing is,
stages.
if something happens and you either do more than you initially planned or less than you initially planned, all that time that went into planning years 5, 6, 7 will have to be redone again, because now like projects have shifted.
Yeah. And so, for example, in her case, like obviously the stage 1 is developing that area. She's working on the workshop. She's working on basic clearing this in order to have her orchard and garden and staple gardens while she might be fixing the pond. So that's kind of the stage 1. But from there, what we do next is we talk about, okay, so what's the plan for the year? Like, and there is a specific type of question that we employ for that. Like, it's like, what would make you happy with the progress? Looking back, to this year, like what would make you happy with the progress you did? And based from that, she and any other client that I'm working with is kind of outlining the vision and the wish list, basically. And that vision,
wish list is a good word for that. Can I just interject for a second?
Yes.
One way I like to ask that question is, because sometimes you ask that question and that things don't immediately pop to mind. The way I ask it is, okay, let's suppose like if it's February 2023 now, 2024 now, let's suppose it's February 2025. I've flown over to your property and you're giving me a tour. What are you really excited to show me on the property that you're really proud of? That makes it a bit more visceral in terms of, oh, like I finally have this chicken area set up. These things are growing in the garden. It helps people visualize. And, you know, it's useful for us because like they give you, I guess the purpose of that step is capture the things they need to see on the property to feel good about the progress they've made, because you don't want to give them an implementation plan and then once they've achieved the implementation plan, they'll look back on the year and they're like, was this it? So you want to capture what excites them, but you also want to have an understanding of, like once you have all the projects that vision translates into, it's easier to say, okay, you actually can't do this in a year. This is like 4 years of work. So the idea here is, as you say, capturing the wish list. So you know what excites them, and then you trim it down with all the other steps of the plan, like the process you use to create that plan.
Yeah, so the client will outline basically the wish list for that year. And then my assignment is to, you know, take that and then see, is it realistic? So I go through a series of steps. Like the first one is, and this would be like a different,
Actually,
yeah.
Sorry, one more thing. Could we just show them the, okay, so we have 2 documents here that we want to show you. One is this document, which has like the final 12-month planning, essentially. Like you can think of it as, again, I like to say it's something you can put on a piece of napkin. So I go back to the first document, which has like the finalized plan.
It has the plan and it has
like
the
dashboard.
Yeah, it has the plan
So,
and it has the objectives and it has the calendar.
The objectives,
and it has,
like this is the end result of that plan. Now we want to walk you through the process William uses to get to this summary.
Yeah. So the
first question was the vision. The
Yeah.
question we talked about, like what do we want to see 12 months from now?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
And that outlines, like in bullet points, the type of systems that someone wants in that year. And then I think about, okay, so what would be the development goals for this year, objectives? I do the heavy lifting of thinking, like, okay, so from all these 3, like which one make the most sense in terms of impact that they're having, if they're addressing like a weak link in the system, if they are optimizing a certain production. Like it will be different if you're already have things going, or if you're starting from scratch. If you're starting from scratch, like these are all development goals or installation type of goals. And I go to like thinking like, are these addressing the main function of the property? Are they going to bring the client to closer to the vision that they're having? What would be like urgent and important? Like what's the least effort for the greatest effect? So I have like these frameworks, prioritization frameworks that I take their wish list, and then I come up, okay, so what would be like,
you map it on the framework. To make it more tangible, before we move on to the next step, could you walk with like Shree's example of why you chose these development goals? Walk through what the goals are and why you chose them.
Okay, she definitely wanted like a orchard or a food forest, gardens in the greenhouse, chickens and nut trees. And when it came down, like it's always like, to me, because I've been developing my properties and I've been working with other people, like these are huge goals in a sense. This will take time. So what I did is I kind of prioritized from these 4, like what would be like the 3 for this year. And she did, like before we started this exercise, she gave me like a critical input in terms of context of how much time she can work on the property, and what type of help she'll having, and what type of resources she can invest. So I chose 3 development goals. The first one is obvious, like the food plots and so the gardens and the greenhouse, and to kickstart, beginner level vegetable production, because you can go as, advanced and, as you want with the garden. But in year 1, it's more important that you start with the production. You plant it, you build your garden beds, you plant it, and you have some production. That's kind of the year 1 goal, and you can then optimize in year 2 and year 3. The second would be establishing the framework for the food forest. When I say framework, it's canopy layer, so big tall trees, so other type of layers, shrubs and perennial herbaceous perennials, they can come later. So this is all these are kind of scaled down big type of goals from here, to make it easier to achieve. And the last one is the chickens, because like she wanted like nut trees as well, and we'll see if we can come to that this year. But I thought that chickens are like such an easy low-hanging fruit. They give you food and they give you fertility, and it's easy to set them up and to have them. So like I chose like these 3 to be the development goals for the year, based on the her goals and the prioritization framework, and making those, let's say, vague type of goals into more something that's appropriate to
Complete
the
this year.
yeah.
And if you look at like the reasoning you've put down, it kind of summarizes everything you said about like why these 3, because all 3 are close to the house.
Yeah.
They all produce food and help you with this, like her specific top goal of resilience.
Yes.
Gardens and chickens, immediate return on investment compared to the nut trees, which would take time to produce. So that's why you said, like, don't worry about the nut orchard this year, not close to the house, not urgent, not the weakest link on the property, not a low-hanging fruit or a leverage point.
Yeah, like chickens would definitely be a leverage point. You get food, you get fertility, you get all those things just for like, and the garden as well. So so once I have these development goals for the year, then I map like the key actions that need to happen for all those 3 goals. And these are basically the workflows, the steps that you need to go through in order to, hit this goal. Like these will be like development goals. You can think about these like as key actions or key results even. So key actions in terms of these are actionable, but each of these is basically a milestone that you need to hit, or result that you need to hit in order to get to this main goal. So once you go through, like you clear the area, you design a garden, you build the garden beds, make a plan, plant the veggies, you care for them, you harvest them, you build a greenhouse. That's your development goal in a nutshell. These are the milestones. These are the key actions.
This also comes back to what we were saying when we looked at the design of, that's just the concept plan. When you get to the individual stages of those projects, then you do the more detailed design. So you'll notice that in each of these development goals, there's a stage that's about designing the detailed layout of that particular system, now that you know the big picture.
Yes. And that's for the food forest as well. So you clear the area, test the soil, you do the food forest design, you map that layout on the ground, doing earthworks and soil improvements if necessary, plant the trees. Basically, you hit your development goal for the year. Same with the chickens. So after I map all of this, in ideal scenario, I would, for myself, what I do for myself, I actually know for each of these key actions, I have a good idea of average time they take me to complete that, because I went multiple times through all these steps, and I have an idea of how much time it might take me. So in the next step, I would again run that through the filter. Okay, so these all steps are taking this much time, and I have only this much time in a year. So does it make sense?
Does it fit into the bucket?
Yeah, yeah. Is it realistic
Uh-huh.
that I'll hit for Shree? We don't, it's hard to. I don't know. Like there are so many different variables that are going into this, so we are going to play it by ear for now, and we'll see how much how much each of these steps will take it, and then we'll readjust based on that. But in this reality check, like it's you need to see if what you're planning is realistic. In my own case, I know how much time I'm having for working on the farm, and then basically I know for almost for each of these, but I can estimate and then multiply that by 2 and see whether that's realistic. But after you think about, okay, so is this realistic, and can I do that, and how much people, how much labor do I have access to, and whether you kind of pass that test or not, or you have that data or not, you can and you should create like a prioritized list of what you should be like if worst comes to worst, what would be, if shit hits the fan, like what would be the most important thing to establish first, and then second, and then third, so you can create like a prioritized list. Like this is the prioritized list of what she was saying here in the beginning, and then you can prioritize once more based on what will make sense.
So you
to
trim
do
it
first.
twice, once
Yes.
from the vision, and then once
Yeah.
when you do that reality check of what are the resources you have in terms of time, money, and labor.
Yeah.
Like in her case, we're assuming that she will have time to do all three, so the prioritized list doesn't look different. But sometimes when you do the reality check, you realize that actually we had 3 goals, but maybe we need to leave the chickens and just focus on number 1 and number 2.
Yeah.
But in her case, we're assuming that she'll be able to get all 3 done this year. And if not, as you say, like as you're implementing, this plan might need to get adjusted.
Well, like I am leaving all of them here, but I am putting them in certain order. So we'll first focus on the garden, and as the year progresses, if you don't have time for something, then you trim the last thing. So
so instead of doing chickens, you focus on finishing all the tasks, key actions related to the garden, the greenhouse.
Yeah. So basically, like this prioritized list tells me, together with the climate calendar for the subtropics, how to map the key actions that we outline here on a timeline, basically creating a personalized calendar.
I love these timelines. Like my mind works. Usually I need to see something like this to know what I'm going to do. And then I can just like look at, okay, well, in February, the only things I need to do are this. And then I also get a sense of like what's coming next month. So if I need to plan around visiting the farm or visiting, I have a vacation coming up, like this creates so much headspace for me.
I agree.
It removes a lot of the anxiety that comes into, am I actually doing enough? And also, I have so many things to do. I can't keep up. It removes both of those for me.
Yeah. So this is like mapping all those key actions that need to happen, and with that priority in mind on when they should happen.
And obviously, it depends on like she's in a subtropical climate, so when she plants will be different to someone in the Mediterranean.
Well, she can, in her climate, like in this step, I look at those type of information, but I also look like, does it make sense in her climate to be working outside at certain times of the year, and what will make sense in terms of her winter and spring and summer, and when she should be planting, and so it all goes into informing this type of timeline.
It looks so like clean and simple, but a lot of thought
Yes, yeah, to
goes
come to
into this. Like
this.
I
Yeah.
know, we've been talking. I know how much time has gone into creating this.
Mm, mm.
Plan was something like 6-7 hours.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it like, yeah, just to boil down everything, like what we need to work on, what is a priority, and then arranging it on a calendar. So once we have, this is like the plan for the year for her. And we'll, she's already clearing the land for the food forest and garden, or we'll work on the layout for the garden next. What she needs to, she already has seedlings, so for the garden, so we'll be, building the garden beds, sowing, and then, while the garden is planted, do like a food forest design and, setting up the infrastructure for chickens, and then in the fall, setting out the greenhouse and planting and preparing for planting for the food forest. And basically, that outline what she's doing this year. We'll see, the tempo we'll be implementing all those things, and how we need to rearrange or adapt or adjust what's here, and we'll just, as we're going, we are playing it by ear based on the feedback that we're getting from the site, staying always flexible. And after mapping this, then the ideal is, in terms of being effective, is to think about your quarterly goals, and reflecting each quarter. So like the number one, like obviously like the first quarter is almost at the end, but you think in quarters. So the number one goal for the next 3 months, let's say, would be that we get that garden established. Set up the food plots and kickstart that beginner level vegetable production, which is that number one on priority. And key milestones to achieve that are all the key actions that are basically outlined here, except minus the harvesting, minus the garden crop care and building a greenhouse that comes after those 3 months. But these are the key milestones. Yeah.
This reminds me of something another client of ours said, Jonathan said. Like whenever he gets overwhelmed, he looks at this section of, okay, what's the thing I'm working on right now? And it just calms down the anxiety. You know exactly what you need to do for the next 3 months. And you also have the peace of mind knowing that everything else for the year has already been thought of. It's been mapped out. The design has been thought of. So it makes it a lot easier to just focus on the things that you need to focus on. Like we've planned the work. Now it's time to work the plan. And having it in these, again, I always think of this as Russian dolls. You have the next 3 months, you have the yearly plan, you have the phases of development, and then you have the overall end design you want to end up in 10 years, 20 years from now.
Yeah. And like it all, as you zoom out and zoom in, like it all makes sense. What you're working on, like these are the detail. Working on a garden is a detail, but it all fits in a bigger picture of the property development. So yeah, basically that's it. And then we see, as even in my own, I've been doing this for a while, and I know that I'm sometimes overestimating what I can do. So it's always kind of that monitoring your progress. You're readjusting what you're doing. You're getting feedback from the site, so you're always kind of in that loop. So basically, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. So a couple of things before we wrap up. First, if you want us to do this for you, reach out to us. I'm going to include the link below the video. Usually what we do is we have a discovery/sales call to discuss if you're a good fit for this, if this is something you need. Right now we're booked until the end of March, I think. So like if you can't find a spot on the calendar, but you've already seen what this looks like and you know you absolutely want it, we're also going to include the purchase link so you can just purchase it directly without having to go through the discovery call. Right now we charge $3,000 for the whole thing,
Mm.
$2,000 for the design, $1,000 for the implementation plan. Again, depending on when you're watching this video, that might change. That's that. And in terms of our next videos, one thing we're really keen on doing this year, fingers crossed, we'll make time to absolutely do it, is we want to showcase the work William is actually doing on the farm, more videos from the farm itself. So that's coming up in spring this year.
Okay.
That's all on my end. I'm going to stop recording.
Yeah.
See
Okay,
you
bye.
next time.